everyone, I'm Siri Vincent Pluff.
And I'm Cassandra Snow.
And you are listening to Chaos and Cunning,
a DIY witchcraft podcast at the crossroads of magic and daily living.
Hey everyone, I am Siri Vincent Pluff.
And I'm Cassandra Snow.
Welcome to Chaos and Cunning, a DIY witchcraft podcast at the crossroads of magic and daily living. So this is our first episode. So today we'll be starting by introducing ourselves, the podcast, and what both chaos magic and cunning work mean to us and our spiritual journeys and lives.
Before we get into that, I want to talk more about us and introduce the audience to us. And we like to introduce each other when we do stuff together. So I will actually talk about our friendship and collaboration first, and then talk about how cool Siri is. Siri and I decided to do this podcast together. I've just been sort of itching to do a witchcraft podcast. I have a lot of things that I want to share and offer to people that aren't necessarily right for a different format. And then Siri was sort of doing this podcast, but felt like they wanted some support, or at least like it would be more fun with someone else. And so we started thinking about approaching this project together. You may know about quote unquote us or whatever, because we've been deeply supportive of each other from the very beginning. We both came from the Little Red Tarot blog, which rest in peace. I loved it so much, and I'm still friends with most of us that were at Little Red Tarot, but that was an internationally syndicated tarot blog focused on queerness and radicalness and progressiveness and stuff like that. I learned that Siri, who was writing about heathenry, which isn't my practice, but I thought their writing was really good, and I just love learning and reading about different people's journeys and spirituality. I realized that they were living in Minneapolis, and I was like, oh, cool. Since then, we've been really good friends. We've been there through each other, really through some of our toughest times, as well as our silliest, most chaotic times. So you've often seen us doing like blog swaps and stuff like that. And then we wrote a book together that was based on classes we did together. The book is called Lessons from the Empress, and it focuses on tarot really for creativity, but how creativity is like a different and formative and really important piece of self-care, as well as holistic spiritual stuff. And chaos magic leans into that a lot too, which is where we've kind of both found ourselves lately, but you'll hear more about that later. And so that's sort of Siri and I was literally at their house last night. It was very silly and fun. So that's us as friends, or family, really. Us, and in fact, this is like 3 days in a row we're seeing each other, because Siri and their spouse watched my kiddo the other night.
I'm very spoiled, y'all. Very spoiled.
I mean, I try to spoil everyone I love, but I assume you're referring to my perfect angels. So yes. So yeah. And then Siri additionally had the Heathen's Journey blog and then the Heathen's Journey podcast. We both are sort of on social media doing our thing for a long time. Siri stepped away from that a little bit, but still has quite a following talking about runes and heathenry, as well as tarot and creative process. So, and witchcraft in general. But Siri, I think at this point, is probably best known for their incredible work queering the runes. Runes have a really bad rep for being very appropriated by really awful, like the worst of the worst people. And Siri connects really strongly to a lineage that would have used runes, and does so much beautiful, important work in reclaiming spaces that are all about trying to essentially end the white supremacy in those areas, including doing prison reformation work, because that's where a lot of it takes root and things like that. Their website, in addition to talking about all their cool and magical and incredible work, also has anti-racist heathen resources, things like that. So they're one of my favorite people, and their work is really cool. And if you haven't bought Queering the Runes, what are you doing? You should go do that. Oh, yeah. And then we also you can talk about the book we just did together that we're both in. So that's Siri.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for that lovely intro. This is why we like to do it because we're both kind of bashful. So, like, when I introduce Cassandra, it's far better than when I introduce myself, and vice versa. You probably know of their work from Queering the Tarot, which did start at the Little Red Tarot blog, but is now a fantastic book that is out in the world and is kind of like, if you're a tarot reader, you need this one on your shelves. Like, you need to have this perspective, even if you are not queer, in order to read for queer clients. It's like a very seminal work in the tarot space. They also have published Queering Your Craft, which is a book all about queering your witchcraft. It's kind of like the magical answer to queering the tarot in a lot of ways. And we worked on Lessons from the Empress together. So Cassandra, we talk about this quite a bit, but Cassandra also has a history and a background in theater and performing arts. So we are both creatives in a lot of different ways. And so Cassandra really brought their good eye to, you know, many different facets of creativity to Lessons from the Empress, which stemmed from a course that we taught together that was all about creativity. We've talked about bringing that course back, and may do that in the future. So stay tuned for that. Um, but I'm couching
Yeah.
that in, like, we may do this. There's no hard, like, this is happening, like, language there.
Agreed.
Um,
Yeah.
yes. And then also Cassandra is the editor and an essayist, of course, but also the editor of Tarot in Other Words, which is their most recent release. It is a book of tarot essays by leading queer kind of writers. So I have a piece in there. A lot of your favorites, so like Asali Earthwork, has a beautiful essay in there. Petrus, who is the poet laureate of Minneapolis, has an essay in there. We also have Meg Jones Wall of 3 a.m. Tarot, and Maria Minnis has an essay in the compilation as well. So it's a really, really good collection. And if you are like me, so I love reading books about the occult, but I sometimes really struggle to get through like a tarot book that is card by card. Or a rune book even that is like rune by rune. Um Not knocking those books, they're necessary, and I think that there's like only so many ways that you can structure a book about tarot or runes without doing that. But you will learn a lot through reading this book, and it's a different perspective than the card by card perspective that a lot of books go through. So pick that up wherever you get your books. And now we are doing the podcast together, and you will learn so much more about us just as we chat.
Yeah. So, in future episodes, we're actually going to open up the podcast. We're not going to do these long intros every time. The first episode is always sort of an introduction to us. So, moving forward, we'll do like brief, like, I'm Cassandra Snow, I'm Siri Vincent Pluff, and then we'll move forward with the divination corner. We want to be clear that this is not necessarily a forecast. A lot of really incredible podcasts and other things do that. We were less interested in adding to that because I also think that cacophony can get very loud and very crowded, and it can really confuse people. But what I was really interested in doing was rooting ourselves, first of all, in our professional work. We both, and also divination is a big part of cunning work, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But we, I make my living reading tarot cards. Siri makes part of their living reading runes as well as reading tarot and other stuff. And on top of that, we both use it, to approach spell work, to approach relationships with spirits and deities. And it felt important to do. And so, what we want to do now is offer just some ideas or things to think about from the tarot. Again, these are not forecasts, it's more like prompts for journaling or conversation or contemplation. If you follow me on social media, you'll see that I do a similar thing weekly. But this, we want to sort of open up even more and just talk about some of the themes of it and just kind of see how that guides us. So,
Yeah, I think also just like, while Cassandra shuffles, I can tell
yeah,
you a little bit about forecasting. Forecasting is a very important skill for any diviner. But sometimes in a podcast format, I feel like if we were to try to do forecasting, if you're coming to this podcast episode like years down the line, you're going to be like, I don't care. Like I do not care what was happening in whatever month of 2025. It is now 2030.
right.
Um
Agreed.
so yeah, that's kind of why we're also doing it this way. And we're also teachers. So we both love teaching, so this felt like a
Yeah.
natural way to do it.
I also believe strongly that you should always credit your tarot decks. This is someone's art, and this is someone's, in a lot of cases, heart and soul. And I'm using Todd Alcott's Horror Tarot today. This is my favorite horror tarot. It's like the cards look like pulp covers, and it's very clear to me that Alcott is an expert in horror, but also at least respects and did his research on tarot. The card I pulled for us today is the Page of Wands, which is very exorcist inspired. So, I'm really big on using tarot to actually name and process our feelings. Again, I am a fortune teller. I do divine. I mean, everything is divination if you're pulling cards, but I do all of this stuff. But again, this is specifically, I asked, what can we think about? What can we talk about? And Page of Wand is so much about new. And I think right now, if you're listening to this, it's maybe a good time to step back and actually write down the cool ideas you've had recently, even if they are deeply chaotic, even if they are deeply, what are we? Hey, I didn't really have an idea so much as the word popcorn, like just getting it all written down. And for ideas to come to fruition, you often have to actually sit with them, meditate on them, talk about them with other people in your life. And so I think it's not just about naming, like, oh, I've had fun new ideas lately. I also think it's about giving yourself space to actually create in your brain before you attempt hitting whatever your creative outlet is. I think that that is so important. I will also say I tend to see pages as very youthful. And when I think of youth, even though my own childhood was clown shoes, I tend to think of sort of play and whimsy and things like that. And so I think the Page of Wands is also like, no, no, have your new ideas and then think about them and then just go have fun and live your life. And hopefully they will fill out from there. So our divination corner message right now is to just do that, to write down and name the new, to let them really come and fill out in your mind and then go play. And then after that, you can get to creating. I will also say the Page of Wands is a very free spirited card. It's sort of that wands tend to correlate to fire, which, I think about my girlfriend has a fire pit in her backyard. And I think about us like just hanging out at the fire pit throughout spring and autumn. It's a little too hot here in the summer lately, but um so I think about stuff like that. And so thinking about that free spirit and spiritedness and fun and whimsy of fire, um, combined with sort of that younger, more whimsical energy of the pages. And so your other sort of message or thing to think about right now is like, are you having fun? Are you enjoying your life? And how can you use this page energy and this wands energy to course correct, if not? So that is my divination corner. And now Siri is going to draw, I believe, a rune.
Yes. So a little bit of rune ASMR. Oh god. That just like I just like sprinkled like paper shavings all over the desk when I did that. This is a
Uh,
very professional podcast, everybody. Were you gonna say
We did name it Chaos and Cunning.
yes?
Oh,
This is really funny. I got Kaunaz, which is a fire rune, um, much like the Page of Wands. And so there are two primary fire runes, Kaunaz and now these, and Kaunaz is definitely the more like fun one. I often associate Kaunaz with storytelling, actually, so very similar vibes to the Page of Wands here. Um, so this is kind of like you will tell the story that you just can't get out of your head. You will do the creative thing that you just can't stop thinking about or creating. So one of the other meanings of this rune actually is the ulcer, which is not super pretty. But I like to think of, or I like to sort of extrapolate upon that as like, this is that thorn in your side. This is the like, get up and go. This is, I have to do this thing. Otherwise, I will not stop thinking about it. So this is very much that like creative project that lights your inner flame. And it is also a creative project that is um like connected to community in some way, I would say. Whether that is you as an individual creator reflecting on your community, or it is a collaborative creative effort in some way. Whatever this is has a lot to say about like the society that we live in, and specifically like your um friends and family and everything, that kinda, like, milieu. Another thing I do like to think of this as, like, telling stories around a fire. So, getting back to those sort of, like, bonfire vibes, like, telling stories around the fire, like, giving offerings to the fire. All of that is appropriate for now these as well. Um, so this is really funny. So we did have, a previous recording of an episode that did not, save, where the tarot reading that Cassandra did and the rune that I pulled were very much in sync, and that has happened yet again. So I'm very curious
I
to
love it. I
see.
think it's great. I think it's a sign that we're doing something right. We might be Yeah, I think it's really cool that we're doing this, like, under Mercury retrograde day. I did sort of evoke Saturn as we were recording, because we are recording on a Saturday, and so I was very like, "Hey, it's Saturn's day. They got our internet's under control for us, etc." And I think some of that is like, even though we're recording this under not the best astro weather, I do think that that sort of evocation of Saturn was like, yes, you all know what you're doing. You're on the same page. So
Yes, as silly, goofy, happy, fun time as we are, we're also both experts, like, and like owning that, right? I think that that is a thing. And yeah, I also think that both Kaunas and the Page of Wands are so appropriate for a first episode. They are so appropriate for the beginning of something um like this. So I think that that is also just like a very good sign. So whatever is going on in your life as you are listening to this episode, carry that forward.
mhm,
Oh,
mhm.
and I didn't credit these runes. This is a for those who are watching, this is a set of flat Lake Superior pebbles that's an old like college friend of my dad's actually made and like sent with my dad to give to me.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm gonna cry. That's so sweet.
It is, and this person, as far as I know, is not a magical practitioner. My dad didn't say anything about that. Like, they just like were hanging out with my parents, and my mom mentioned that I'm like really into Nordic stuff, and they were like, "Oh, I have. Let me paint this set of runes for them." So that's where I got this set, and it's very very dear to me.
Yay, I love it. So, all of our episodes moving forward are going to have a theme. Normally, we'll sort of talk about it in the beginning. Um, oh, and also we'll get to the meat of the podcast quicker than this in the future. But Today's theme is just introducing you to what chaos magic and cunning work mean to us and why this is sort of a combination that we've both adopted in terms of like the core of our magical practice. And one thing I want to be really clear about is Siri and I are sort of beginner ish, or at least in the student ish phase of chaos magic. We've both been practicing magic for 20 years. And we both were really big fans of certain chaos magicians, specifically Kellyanne Maddox, and I think a few other people like that. And so we started looking into chaos magic. And I think we were both like, oh, this is a lot of what I do. Um
Yeah, like, this is I was,
and
like, reading I started reading Phil Hine last year, another, like,
yeah, same.
incredible chaos
Yeah.
magician, and I was like, "Oh, shit." Like, this just makes sense to me. And I'm actually
Well,
realizing now that we're talking about it on a recording, we're talking about it, and I'm having the realization that, so I was initiated Wiccan as a teen, and, I'm not gonna get into that, but, the
great.
high priest yeah, right, whatever. Um
Perfect. Love that.
But the context, the fact that it was a Wiccan coven is important for the context of what I'm about to say. So, like, the high priest and high priestess of that coven, I'm realizing were really into chaos magic, actually.
Mm.
And, like, they took a chaos magic approach to teaching Wicca, which I think is really actually very helpful within a Wiccan
Oh yeah.
context.
Yeah.
And, they were great, like, their, like, theoretical brains about magic were really good, and so,
Mhm.
of course, when I picked up chaos magic, I was like, "Oh, like, cool, chill, this is what we've been doing." So, like, for example, like,
Mm.
when I first started doing magic with them, a lot of Wiccan covens will have a binder or a shared book of shadows that, contains the rituals for that coven's, you know, sabbats, or, they may have standard rituals. We wrote almost every single ritual every time.
I love that actually.
Yeah, like, it was great, and so they really instilled in me this, like, sense of, like, creativity and, like, approaching magic with a sort of curiosity, and that is really at the heart of a lot of chaos magic. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
When I am someone who, when I am reading magic books or when I am looking for something specific, I will use spells that other people wrote and I will use spells that, I will use the, enchantments that supposedly go back hundreds of years and things like that in order to do that work. But one thing I think is really important to remember, and part of the reason that I love chaos magic's adoption of technology, but also just the fact that we live in a society.
Breaking news, this just in, we live in a society. Oh,
So so I really liked that. And then a lot of times, harvest and abundance fundamentally meant something different when a lot of these spells were supposedly written and when a lot of them we know were actually written. So I feel strongly that a lot of them at least need updated. I usually do it the way it's written the first couple times just to get a feel for it, feel like I know what I'm doing. But then when I do it like for real, I tend to sort of modernize it a little bit anyway, with as much respect to the original spell creator as I can. And so,
we should probably define what we're talking about.
yeah, that's fair. I would, yeah. um, eh, I will say I do think that the episode up until now has been coherent, but for those who might be a little confused, like what is chaos magic?
Chaos magic is essentially a form of ceremonial magic, that really kind of developed out of a, like, God, I'm struggling to define it right now, actually, because I'm reading This is Chaos, which is
Oh, I
an
am
essay
too.
compilation. Yeah,
Or I just
I
finished it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm reading this essay compilation about chaos magic, and I'm actually in the middle of the chapter that is about the history of chaos magic. So, like, I just want to, like, info dump about all of these magicians in the 70s that, like, sort of created this thought process. But I'm gonna actually kick it off to Cassandra, I think, to define this because I'm just like, can I just read this essay to you? And you do not want me to do that.
So chaos magic, the way I see it and the way I'm defining it in this moment and in future episodes, I might say something different. And a lot of it is that's the beauty of chaos magic. So but chaos magic inherently at its heart basically says that the universe itself has like a randomizer or is not fully orderly, and that we can pull on the things that aren't decided yet, that aren't in motion yet, that aren't settled, and sort of work them to our favor. That's one of the basic premises of it. And so instead of so a lot of witchcraft I feel is like, "Oh, hey, we love the natural world and we respect it and we wanna work with it." And we'll get to that in a moment because that is cunning work, which is also like a foundational practice for both of us. There is so much that we both know and feel is unknown and undecided. And I think too, and this is not anything you'll read in a chaos book unless we write one or someone steals this. I don't know. It's I just cut that part. But
Whatever.
um, yeah. I think and that sounds pretty straightforward, right? But chaos magic, like any ceremonial magic, can get a little complicated, but in a way that in my mind is really fun and thought provoking. And it's things I like playing with. We already talked about how it really embraces technology. A fundamental aspect of it that I know Siri and I really love is you can sort of pick up and put down pantheons as they speak to you, which also allows for like pop culture influence in our work. I almost said infiltration, which I guess also works, but I meant
I would say that there is definitely some pop culture infiltration
yeah,
in my life.
yeah. Well, and a lot of times, and I haven't actually done this, but a lot of times chaos magicians will like find or create and name new deities to work with while they're working on things, which I love. It's I like to think of it as sort of DIY technomancy is a lot of it. Like you don't have to be a computer expert, but it gets you into sort of that. I will also say, and I feel very brave saying the quiet part out loud, but
Mm.
um chaos magic does really embrace a lot of pseudoscience as just science that isn't finished or completed. And I think that right now, where we are in witchcraft discourse and stuff, that gets a really bad rep. And I think that if you name it as pseudoscience, it absolutely does not have to. And it's also okay to believe in things that aren't set in stone. That's literally what faith in any spirituality is. And I think it's really silly how much people want to bring cold hard logic to witchcraft and obviously use your brains, right? We don't support just like not thinking ahead, but at least in theory we don't, or at least on paper we don't. The things we've encouraged each other to do might tell you differently. But for but for the most part, um, and so I think I really love that they're just like, yeah, we're playing with quantum physics. We're playing with the idea of parallel lives. We're playing with string theory. And I think that things like that and we're playing with the paranormal, like stuff that other people would be like, oh, that's not a ghost. That's your heat pump making a noise. Um, and we've also both had experiences where, like, yeah, sometimes it's my heat pump making a noise, and sometimes it's a ghost banging on my heat pump. Like, um,
Yeah, and I also think too that, like, another kind of way of articulating this about chaos magic is that, like, um, it's very good for play and what if. So, like fuck, am I frozen again? Am I back? Okay. Ah, my internet. Anyway,
come on, Daddy
um,
Saturn, help us out.
please. I'm just a poor little mercurial. Um,
Okay. Amazing. This is why
Um,
recording in the morning, even if you're not a morning person, like I definitively am not, this is why recording in the morning rules. You just don't know what's gonna pop out of our tired mouths.
hell yeah. Hell yeah. Saturn take the reins, Mercury take the reins. So yeah, one of the things that I really love about chaos magic is
Oh, I
how like experimental and fun it can be, and it really asks what if. Not only what if there's a ghost, and not only I know there's a heat pump, but also what if the ghost is trying to get my attention by banging on the heat pump. It's
right,
also it's also very focused on things like um well, does it matter if it's real and true in the physical here and now? If in a ritual setting, specifically in a ritual setting, you can get into a mindset where you believe that this thing is real and true, therefore you can harness that energy of that belief, which arguably is magic anyway.
right,
So like string theory may not be, officially like scientifically discovered or sound or whatever, but it's kind of like, okay, we have this idea. How can we play with that ritualistically and in a magical and occult setting to our benefit, even if it's not
yeah.
real and true? One of my favorite chaos magician, Aidan Wachter, has a quote that is
Oh, I love
telling.
Aiden.
He's so great. I love him. But one of my favorite quotes from him just kind of sums up my theory of magic very well, which is magic is telling true lies. Because even if you're
I love
trying to
that.
do magic, right? Like, even if you're trying to do magic to get to a specific outcome, or you're doing a very traditional, say, like abundance working or something like that, um, you're like, the lie is that the abundance has already happened. You're still doing it, even if you aren't like in that paradigm.
Well, and I think chaos magic speaks to things that have been important to me my whole life, even when I was like a closeted borderline conservative Christian. I will say that I was always very queer friendly. I was always a feminist. I was raised by a very mouthy second wave mom, but who also was deeply affected by losing friends during the AIDS crisis and things like that. So like, my mom and I weren't quite fully in on the other beliefs and the people in our church, but still we were there and we were complicit in some of the stuff that was said and done. And so, but I say all that to say, like, at the time, people would challenge me and be like, oh, well, that's not really Christ. That's just power of belief. And I love that. Like, okay, so is literally everything. That's the point of faith. That's the point of spirit. That's the point of all of this stuff. I think so many kids things are go into the heart of like, clap if you believe in fairies. If you believe in fairies, they're true. And like we learn it as kids, and then as we get older, people want to chip away at those parts of us. And I love that chaos magic is like, no, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, there's like a certain kind of joy that
Mm-hmm.
um is maintained. Like Kellyanne Maddox, again, like we mentioned her earlier in the podcast, fantastic chaos magician, chaos witch. And she really does center like what brings your spark back? Like what is your interest?
Mm-hmm.
Like, all of those things. Um and I think that's something that we also bring to our cunning work as well.
Hmm. Yeah.
Cunning work is kind of like a fancy word for folk magic.
Hmm.
In a lot of ways.
Basically.
There's like more to it than that, but like it's folk magic, right? So it comes from in Europe, um, even after Christianization, there were still folk magicians who were serving their communities, who were, providing folk healing remedies and all of those things. And they often differentiated themselves from witches
Mhm.
through calling themselves cunning folk or cunning men or cunning women.
Mhm.
So you could have like they could still perform this magic in a way that wasn't liable to get them like persecuted or something.
Right.
So a lot of cunning folk and cunning work uh comes from at least in the United States, the term is often like really closely associated with like English speaking countries, like England, Scotland, Wales,
Mhm.
folk magic. Although I will say that in Scandinavian regions, there were just like cunning kona, like cunning was still used. So like, it just it's in the zeitgeist, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so a lot of people may like just associate the word cunning craft or cunning work with um folk magic from those regions. We are a little bit more expansive than that here. We're not only talking about folk magic from the quote unquote British Isles. Um I'm uh I need to figure out a better way of saying British Isles. That is not giving England their colonial flowers. Because fuck them.
Fuck that.
Anyway, fuck the English. Not the people, but like the empire. Fuck empire. Um,
I have like a lot of like deeply British ancestry, and I'm like, yes, correct. Fuck that.
yes. Yeah, so when we talk about cunning magic and folk magic, we are also talking about, folk magic that has developed on the margins. We're also talking about and being inclusive of like North American folk practices like hoodoo. And though we are both white, so we're not necessarily practicing, hoodoo or within any kind of closed folk magic tradition. Um, I want to make it clear that we are inclusive of those traditions as well.
Well, and specifically, because when I talked about chaos magic, I talked about how it works with technology and it works with the fact that we live in a society, which means there's a lot of untapped energy there, and it works with belief. One thing and so the actual sort of functions of cunning work are a lot of work with plants, a lot of work with animals, using divination before you really dive into spell work so you get a clear sense of what you're doing. Another thing that I personally love about cunning work is it's very much like when I talked about how chaos magic embraces a lot of pseudoscience, there's a lot of cunning work that is like pre-medicine science that would like we still know that lavender and eucalyptus help headaches. And so it's like digging into like known science and using them for both magical and other purposes. So those are facets of cunning work that we love and that we'll be talking about and working with. And then also, both of our practices are deeply animist, which means we do believe that our stuff has spirits. We do believe that we're working with not just the lavender, but the spirit of the lavender. And I would even say, while this doesn't come into play in how we would maybe do an incantation or anything, for me, I always take it deeply seriously that I'm not only working with the spirit of the lavender, but I'm working with the egregore of everyone who has used lavender in present day for the purpose I'm going to. And then also like the ancestral line going all the way back to people who discovered that this helps headaches or brings peace or whatever. So it's a very spirit oriented way of working that is also very much working with nature. And I think Siri and I are very interested in that, and I think chaos magic and cunning work makes sense to me working together for a lot of different reasons. But I think too, when we look at the effects of climate change, most of which are horrific, but many of which just like, okay, stuff is just different now. Like, I think that that combination is really impactful, and it's also a way to still honor the earth while recognizing the very negative impact that colonialism and hypercapitalism are having on it.
Yeah, and, like, I think that another thing that the 2 really share is that, cunning craft is very much about use what you got, you
Mhm,
know? And if you need a particular, in some cases, say, you're looking for a plant that don't have, like, a dried, version of, um, you know, cutting cutting craft might be like, "Okay, well, wait until you can find it."
mhm.
Um, or it might say, "Well, if you can't do that, then make a substitution." And that's totally okay. And I think that another thing that we both really appreciate about, folk magic is that it is very much like, how can we use what we have readily available to us in such a way that it is powerful? And chaos magic is very similar. So
Mhm.
like a lot of aspects of chaos magic are very mental. So it may be doing things on the astral, working with sigils. These are things that you don't necessarily need a material to do, right?
Or what I love about chaos magic and cunning work is, um, rethinking the stuff you use every day and how that can be magical. And it's getting to know your house, and it's getting to know your sort of like magical tools cabinet in a different way, which I think we both really love. And getting to know like literally the land you're on and all of that stuff in a very different way that is both powerful and impactful. But I know for me, issues, or not issues, but subjects of consent and collaboration and things like that are also really important, because it's not just about the power it gives me. It's like, am I, because I keep using the metaphor of lavender, but like, am I helping the lavender live its best life? And I know that to some people that's going to sound really silly, and maybe our work is not for you, but to us it is really sort of the crux of a lot of it.
Yeah, totally. I think that we'll definitely talk more in depth about animism and what that all means and everything in future episodes because it is such a deep and rich through line of all of our work, whether together or separately. Um and it's one of our deeply held beliefs. And that's the other thing that I don't want to
Mhm.
shy away from in this podcast is like we're going to be talking about our actual spiritual beliefs. Like this is not just kind of this hollow, like, here is the best way of doing like this kind of spell. Like, no, like we're talking about the why behind it. We are talking about our magical theories and like our decades of experimentation that has led us to this point in our both like just personal spiritual careers as well as in our like public careers as
Mhm.
diviners, as folk magicians, as authors, as teachers.
Absolutely. So that is a really good segue into talking about specific spell work that we either are learning or doing or something like that. So, um I think what we're learning for me, I so every time there is a big astrological movement, I am like, I don't know, a Mercury retrograde grade that we're recording under. um I sort of take a step back to be like, okay, so I have these long held beliefs about how we're connected to the planets and what that might mean for us. So now that Mercury's in retrograde and I'm playing with all these ideas from chaos magic, how do I fold that into sort of the cunning work that I do? Um, and I will tell you how I'm doing this Mercury retrograde, and that is not successfum, I And a lot of it was just running out of time and energy. Like, a lot of it was like, "Oh, I don't have time for my usual Mercury appeasement, and now retrograde is here." Um, so a lot of it is that, and if you're listening, do what I say and not what I do. It's never too late for your Mercury appeasement if Mercury's kicking your butt a little. Um, but, like, you can absolutely fix that. So, that's one thing, and then I would also say I just finished This Is Chaos. One thing that really blew my mind, and I even messaged the writer, was Ivy Corvus had a piece on string theory, but sort of changing it to thread theory, and how if we engage in the belief of maybe, I almost want to say parallel lives, but she didn't use that word, but like alternate planes of reality and stuff. And it's like cutting threads between people that we don't want to be anymore and tying threads to people that we do want to be or things that we want to manifest or whatever. And I have just really found that so valuable. But what Ivy says in the piece is that for it should be used for like larger work that changes you more than changes your external reality. And so she recommends like 3 months at a time doing some of the same workings. And so I'm using that to really work with the therapy that I'm in because, again, we are combining daily living with the magic, and daily living should mean taking care of your noggin in the ways that you need. Um, and so I have an incredible therapist. And so working along with stuff we're talking about in therapy, I've been sort of learning about these strings and other things and playing with the idea of like a me who actually does believe in myself and does believe in my ability to do the things that I know that I really want to do in this world. So that's sort of what I'm learning right now. And so again, when we talk about what we're learning, that's like a process I'm in. It's not like an unfinished thing. Like, don't take the 4 sentences I did and then decide you know what to do. Um, it's something I'm learning and playing with. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm excited to get to that essay.
Mhm.
Um, so I have been feeling very drawn to specifically elemental witchcraft lately,
Mm.
which is kind of wild for me because it's like sort of bringing me back to my Wiccan roots a little bit, which like
Mhm.
I want to be very clear, like, when I say bringing me back to my Wiccan roots or when I talk about having formerly identified as Wiccan, that is not to put a stank on Wicca as a practice. And I think that that is overdone in the occultist sphere now. And it kind of comes off as
Mhm.
honestly a little mean girlsy. Like, oh, you're Wiccan? Mm. Like, hate
Well,
that.
some of the smartest people doing work in this community, like Thorn Mooney comes to mind. Absolute brilliant, brilliant woman, incredible work. Definitely Wiccan. Like I
Yeah. And it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, like so what, you know? And a lot of my training did come, you know, like I have a very interesting contemporary experience that I found is not common among students or peers of mine where like I actually did find a coven as a teen. And I
Mhm.
actually was initiated into a Wiccan coven as a teen. So like, you know, I have kind of always had a magical community and been pretty public about magic stuff as a result. Anyway, all of that is to say that when I was at Mystic South a few weeks ago, as of this recording, I met this fantastic woman. Her name is Heron Michelle, and she is the owner of Sojourner Books, which is an occult shop. I think she's in North Carolina. I think she might be in Asheville. Not totally sure. But she's great, and I bought her book on elemental witchcraft, and I'm just really excited to get into it. I have been really hungry for, like, a lengthy project from a witchcraft perspective. Something that I talk about fairly frequently because I don't see people talking about it in the community is magical burnout, um,
Mhm.
which happens, I think, particularly when your spiritual life and your magical life and your career get pulled together, right? Um, so I have definitely dealt with a lot of magical burnout in my time. And there's a lot of um fascism in the world right now and ways in which, like I'm literally watching people being disappeared off the street, like this is
Yeah.
scary. Like these times are hard. So
Yeah.
like I think that burnout is even more prevalent, so I'm trying to lean harder into the things that I'm just like, "I'm so curious about this." Even if it's something that is, maybe not, typical for me. And it's really funny that elemental witchcraft would actually find me again because, when I was back in my 20s, there had been, like, a period where I wasn't really active, um and as I was starting to get back into tarot, back into, magical work, I ended up going to this shop and I was like, "I just wanna practice my spellcraft. Like, what book do you recommend? Like, what's new? What's happening? What are the kids doing these days?" Um, and the person, it was actually Tracy, um, aside for Cassandra, it was actually Tracy who recommended,
Oh, I love Tracy.
yeah. She recommended The Way of Four spell book to me, which it's by Deborah Lipp, and it is a spell book that is just like
Oh,
all
yeah.
about like elemental magic. And that was a really difficult time in my magical practice but also a time of great opportunity. And so the fact that elemental magic and witchcraft is like coming back to me at similar and specific times, I think first of all, hi, it's Mercury retrograde. Of course, we're reviewing our relationships to different forms of magic, but also like I'm just going to follow that and see where it goes.
I love it. Yeah. No, I'm a big fan of Deborah Lipp, and Tracy ran a store here that Siri and I both read at briefly as diviners. Well, Siri read briefly. I read there for years. And Siri's brevity was because I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but something came into the world called COVID-19, and it like sh- it like shut down everything. And so Siri had just gotten hired, and then all of a sudden we were like, well, if we read for people in person, we'll die. So
So bye, I guess. Yeah.
yeah.
Um yeah, so definitely like yeah, some good memories there. I actually specifically, oh my god, I think I might have been like coming back from the Renaissance Festival. And I was like
Oh, wild.
And I was, like, so inspired because I had just been at the Renaissance Festival, and, like, that was the thing that I did as a kid, so I was feeling very nostalgic, and I'd, like, connected with, like,
Yeah.
the land spirits out at the fairgrounds and everything, and I was like, "I'm gonna go to the witch shop." And I went, and there was, like, a meditation circle happening, and then I bought this book about elemental witchcraft, and it was just a really nice day.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, okay, I think that it's funny that we had this extended, like, what are we learning section because this is also a great segue into our final, like, official segment of the podcast, which is, um, just a short little, um, just a short little outro sort of thing, which is what chaos are you doing and what cunning are you working? Which we've both talked about extensively, but we have more specifics to tell you.
Yes. So, my chaos magic right now, something that I've been doing for a really long time that and by a long time, I mean like a couple years, that I think falls pretty firmly under chaos magic or something like that is crafting sigils. Duh, obviously, right? That's a lot of chaos magic, but It's crafting sigils and then getting into Canva, and then which Canva is a free sort of like graphics design thing that people who work for themselves can use. But it's getting into Canva and drawing the sigils there. And then once the sigil for what I'm trying to bring to the forefront is there, I will use like a supportive background. So let's say that I am doing a healing sigil in Canva. I'll put like a green background or something like that. Or if it's trying to bring, friends to me, it'll be like a pink or yellow background or something like that. And then so something that is like supporting it from behind and pushing that message forward. But then it actually works subliminally. Then I take just literally any picture and put it over that so that you can't actually see the sigil or background. And then I make that the background of my phone or computer or whatever. And this has been effective for me. The only tool you really need is time and enough technology to use Canva, which is literally like a computer from 2020 or beyond will still work, or your phone, anything like that. And I actually do it on my phone most often. Um because the phone is the thing I look at on the all the time. I'm pretty much only on my computer to write or take Zoom clients. So, um yeah, and so that is my sort of chaos spell that I want to sort of introduce everyone to, that you can absolutely customize and personalize, and I'll be excited to see what you think of it if you do it. I will say one thing too for people like Siri and I who are recovering perfectionists. It is also a really good practice in both discipline, but also like your sigil, if you're not good at drawing on your phone, is not going to look like it does when you draw it out on paper. It is not going to be perfect and clean. There's just not a way to do it. But I think working with the mess and working with the chaos are very similar. And it's like, hey, even though I'm messy and not perfect at drawing, I still want this spell to work. And I think that that is, I don't know, it's good for recovering perfectionists like us because it's like, hey, it's not actually about how it looks.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I've done that before too. Like
Mhm.
it's been very fruitful when I've done it.
My cunning work right now is I still have some, so it's definitely not an emergency, and I have time and energy to source this. But I, not to toot my own horn, but once or twice a year, I make a pretty powerful money tincture. I'm alcohol sober except for tinctures, and that's because 'cause I'm only putting a couple drops in my mouth, and my alcohol abuse, like, that doesn't trigger me at all, it's not a big deal. Mine is more like if I start having, like, a drink, I just can't stop. So, things like tinctures where it's designed to only work if you just use, like, 3 drops a day or whatever is is fine. But you can also make tinctures out of non-alcohol, so take care of yourself is really what I'm trying to say. Um, but I feel really called to, instead of just using whatever alcohol I had, like, that someone left from a party or whatever, which is what I've been doing, because use what you got. I'm feeling really called to use, pear brandy, and specifically the kind of fancy brandy that has a pear in it. And there's a liquor store near us that does carry it, but it has been out for months. And I just feel very called in my cunning work to like take it slow, use what I got. When I need the pear brandy, it will be there. And then option B would be like I buy brandy and I buy a pear and I let them sort of mix or simmer together before I throw my other like herbs and stuff in there. So I think my cunning work right now is really about like trusting this process of being a little slower and more intentional with even the base ingredient.
I love that. I love that so much. Also it sounds delicious. Like,
It that was
that
also
sounds
part of
good.
it. The last batch I made with gin, which is not my favorite, and when I was in the throes of alcohol abuse, I had a lot of really terrible nights with gin. So, while I will say the money tincture works because of the herbs I use and stuff, it is not my favorite to put a couple drops under my tongue.
Yeah, for sure. Um, heard. Love it. Um, so mine are very related. I have been um trying to get back into dream magic and analyzing my dreams. And it's the kind of thing, this is the kind of magic that I pick up and put down a lot. Whether I'm having like a really active dream time or not. I did have a really crazy dream a few weeks ago that encouraged me to look at dream magic again. I had a dream that my cat, my long-haired cat, like I had a dream that his fur was full of mats, which is very uncommon for him. Like he doesn't often get mats and like all of that stuff, but I had this like dream that I was just like running my hands through his fur and he had all of these like mats all over him. And then that week he proceeded to have like 3 hairballs. And I was like, "Oh, poor buddy, like, what's going on?" And I was like, "Okay," like, I think Dream Me was telling me that he wasn't feeling good and that he needed, to be brushed more often, and so I've been brushing him more often, so I've been kind of, like, paying a little bit more attention to my dreams because it was like, "Oh, hey, like, this was really useful, actually." Like, there was a very clear real life applicability. Well, one of the things that I have been kind of toying with for years is creating my own sort of symbol.
I love that.
Yeah, I've been going back through old dream journals. I've been going back through old, like, journals in general, and just looking at, like, what symbols were really important to me at different points in my life and, like, what that could possibly mean. So, like, if, say, a woman with antlers comes up in a dream again, I'm like, "Oh, like, she might be telling me
Mhm.
something," right? And I think that this is something that everybody, if you want to create your own symbol and dream dictionary, I would highly encourage you to. I actually really struggle to read any book about dream magic because I'm like, but that's so like my subconscious is my subconscious, like I don't know what I'm gonna necessarily get out of a book about dream magic. I could be fully proven wrong. There could be an amazing one out there that is like really helpful for me. So, take that with a grain of salt, but it is one of the things that I think about a lot. So that's one of the things that I've been doing, and as a part of this, I make, herbal remedies, and I, sell them at local markets. Lore Books and Supplies is my online,
Mhm.
bookshop that you can usually find at, like, a market. I try to go to a market once a month, but I took a break for the horrors. Um, just like yeah, I was going through it.
Legit.
Um
Legit.
but I am working on a, dream walker bath tea, that is supposed to assist with, like, lucid dreaming or divinatory dreaming. Um,
Cool.
yeah, and I'm using some herbal allies that I haven't worked with as often, so this is where the cunning craft sort of comes in, is that I am using some herbal supplies that I haven't used very often, um, and it's been fun, it's been fun. I'm, like, toying with, like, catnip being one of the ingredients because it just, like, spoke to me, so, like, yeah. So, Dreamwalker tea may be coming, but we'll
And
see.
good for you if you have a cat that won't try to drink your tea. Mine is a monster.
Oh, well, this is bath tea, so, like, I, like, put it in the
Oh, yeah.
bathtub and, like, shut the door.
That's right. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. No, it's all good because my cats would probably try to drink the tea if it was like a drinkable tea. Although I guess I could just drink it too. I just don't like to, so I don't make, like, teas for drinking as often, first of all, because I love water and I love baths, and it's just fantastic to do that. Um, but if I'm designing something specifically that I wanna sell at a market, like, if you're going to design something that people take internally, there's, like, a whole extra certification process that you can go through, and I just don't wanna deal with that, so I've been doing bath teas.
Yeah.
But the actual ingredients of the tea I could do. as a tea.
For sure. Cool. Well, that was our first episode of Chaos and Cunning. Hopefully, you liked it. Next time, we're going to be getting into how magic and divination work together. I'm very excited about that. Like I said, I am a professional tarot card reader. Siri reads runes and tarot and whatever else professionally, as well as has sort of their own stuff that they can do for clients sometimes, which we'll talk about next time, probably.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
thank you so much.
And stay weird. All right, everybody, that is our show for today. Thank you for listening.
Now it's time for you to go be the chaos you want to see in the world
And create the cunning you dream of. Bye!